Anatomical terminology. Anatomists and healthcare providers use terminology that can be bewildering to the uninitiated. However, the purpose of this language is not to confuse, but rather to increase precision and reduce medical errors. For example, is a scar above the wrist located on the forearm 2 or 3 inches away from the hand? Or is it at the base of the hand? Is it on the palm side or backside? By using precise anatomical terminology, we eliminate ambiguity. Anatomical terms derive from ancient Greek and Latin words. Because these languages are no longer used in everyday conversation, the meaning of their words does not change. Anatomical terms are made up of roots, prefixes, and suffixes. The root of a term often refers to an organ, tissue, or condition, whereas the prefix or suffix often describes the root. For example, in the disorder hypertension, the prefix hyper means high or over, and the root word tension refers to pressure. So the word hypertension refers to abnormally high blood pressure. Anatomical position. To further increase precision, anatomists standardize the way in which they view the body. Just as maps are normally oriented with north at the top, the standard body map, or anatomical position, is that of the body standing upright, with the feet at shoulder width and parallel, toes forward. The upper limbs are held out to each side, and the palms of the hands face forward as illustrated in Figure 1. Using this standard position reduces confusion. It does not matter how the body being described is oriented. The terms are used as if it is in anatomical position. For example, a scar in the anterior, front, carpal, wrist region would be present on the palm side of the wrist. The term anterior would be used even if the hand were palm down on a table. A body that is lying down is described as either prone or supine. Prone describes a face-down orientation, and supine describes a face-up orientation. These terms are sometimes used in describing the position of the body during specific physical examinations or surgical procedures. Regional terms. The human body's numerous regions have specific terms to help increase precision. See Figure 1. Notice that the term brachium, or arm, is reserved for the upper arm, and antebrachium, or forearm, is used rather than lower arm. Similarly, femur, or thigh, is correct, and leg, or crus, is reserved for the portion of the lower limb between the knee and the ankle. You will be able to describe the body's regions using the terms from the figure. Directional terms. Certain directional anatomical terms appear throughout this and any other anatomy textbook. Figure 2. These terms are essential for describing the relative locations of different body structures. For instance, an anatomist might describe one band of tissue as inferior to another, or a physician might describe a tumor as superficial to a deeper body structure. Commit these terms to memory to avoid confusion when you are studying or describing the locations of particular body parts. Anterior, or ventral, describes the front or direction toward the front of the body. The toes are anterior to the foot. Posterior, or dorsal, describes the back or direction toward the back of the body. The popliteus is posterior to the patella. Superior, or cranial, describes a position above or higher than another part of the body proper. The orbits are superior to the oris. Inferior, or caudal, describes a position below or lower than another part of the body proper. Near or toward the tail. In humans, the coccyx, or lowest part of the spinal column. The pelvis is inferior to the abdomen. Lateral describes the side or direction toward the side of the body. The thumb, pollex, is lateral to the digits. Medial describes the middle or direction toward the middle of the body. The hallux is the medial toe. Proximal describes a position in a limb that is nearer to the point of attachment or the trunk of The body. The brachium is proximal to the antebrachium. Distal describes a position in a limb that is farther from the point of attachment or the trunk of the body. The crus is distal to the femur. Superficial describes a position closer to the surface of the body. The skin is superficial to the bones. Deep describes a position farther from the surface of the body. The brain is deep to the skull. Body planes. A section is a two-dimensional surface of a three-dimensional structure that has been cut. Modern medical imaging devices enable clinicians to obtain virtual sections of living bodies. We call these scans. Body sections and scans can be correctly interpreted. However, only if the viewer understands the plane along which the section was made. A plane is an imaginary two-dimensional surface that passes through the body. There are three planes commonly referred to in anatomy and medicine, as illustrated in Figure 3. The sagittal plane is the plane that divides the body or an organ vertically into right and left sides. If this vertical plane runs directly down the middle of the body, it is called the mid-sagittal or median plane. If it divides the body into unequal right and left sides, it is called a parasagittal plane, or less commonly a longitudinal section. The frontal plane is the plane that divides the body or an organ into an anterior front portion and a posterior rear portion. The frontal plane is often referred to as a coronal plane. Corona is Latin for crown. The transverse plane is the plane that divides the body or organ horizontally into upper and lower portions. Transverse planes produce images referred to as cross-sections. Body cavities and serous membranes. The body maintains its internal organization by means of membranes, sheaths, and other structures that separate compartments. The dorsal, posterior cavity, and the ventral, anterior cavity are the largest body compartments. Figure 4. These cavities contain and protect delicate internal organs, and the ventral cavity allows for significant changes in the size and shape of the organs as they perform their functions. The lungs, heart, stomach, and intestines, for example, can expand and contract without distorting other tissues or disrupting the activity of nearby organs. Subdivisions of the posterior, dorsal, and anterior, ventral, cavities. The posterior, dorsal, and anterior, ventral, cavities are each subdivided into smaller cavities. In the posterior, dorsal, cavity, the cranial cavity houses the brain, and the spinal cavity, or vertebral cavity, encloses the spinal cord. Just as the brain and spinal cord make up a continuous, uninterrupted structure, the cranial and spinal cavities that house them are also continuous. The brain and spinal cord are protected by the bones of the skull and vertebral column and by cerebrospinal fluid, a colorless fluid produced by the brain, which cushions the brain and spinal cord within the posterior, dorsal cavity. The anterior, ventral cavity has two main subdivisions: the thoracic cavity and the abdominopelvic cavity. See Figure 4. The thoracic cavity is the more superior subdivision of the anterior cavity, and it is enclosed by the rib cage. The thoracic cavity contains the lungs and the heart, which is located in the mediastinum. The diaphragm forms the floor of the thoracic cavity and separates it from the more inferior abdominopelvic cavity. The abdominopelvic cavity is the largest cavity in the body. Although no membrane physically divides the abdominopelvic cavity, it can be useful to distinguish between the abdominal cavity, the division that houses the digestive organs, and the pelvic cavity, the division that houses the organs of reproduction. Abdominal regions and quadrants, to promote clear communication, for instance about the location of a patient's abdominal pain or a suspicious mass. Healthcare providers typically divide up the cavity into either 9 regions or 4 quadrants. Figure 5. The more detailed regional approach subdivides the cavity with one horizontal line immediately inferior to the ribs and one immediately superior to the pelvis, and two vertical lines drawn as if dropped from the midpoint of each clavicle. Collarbone. There are 9 resulting regions. The simpler quadrants approach, which is more commonly used in medicine, subdivides the cavity with one horizontal and one vertical line that intersect at the patient's umbilicus. Naval. Membranes of the anterior, ventral, body cavity. A serous membrane, also referred to as serosa, is one of the thin membranes that cover the walls and organs in the thoracic and abdominopelvic cavities. The parietal layers of the membranes line the walls of the body cavity. Parietal refers to a cavity wall. The visceral layer of the membrane covers the organs. The viscera, between the parietal and visceral layers, is a very thin, fluid-filled serous space, or cavity. Figure 6. There are 3 serous cavities and their associated membranes. The pleura is the serous membrane that surrounds the lungs in the pleural cavity. The pericardium is the serous membrane that surrounds the heart in the pericardial cavity. And the peritoneum is the serous membrane that surrounds several organs in the abdominopelvic cavity. The serous membranes form fluid-filled sacs, or cavities, that are meant to cushion and reduce friction on internal organs when they move, such as when the lungs inflate or the heart beats. Both the parietal and visceral serosa secrete the thin, slippery serous fluid located within the serous cavities. The pleural cavity reduces friction between the lungs and the body wall. Likewise, the pericardial cavity reduces friction between the heart and the wall of the pericardium. The peritoneal cavity reduces friction between the abdominal and pelvic organs and the body wall. Therefore, serous membranes provide additional protection to the viscera they enclose by reducing friction that could lead to inflammation of the organs. Chapter Review. Ancient Greek and Latin words are used to build anatomical terms. A standard reference position for mapping the body's structures is the normal anatomical position. Regions of the body are identified using terms such as occipital that are more precise than common words and phrases such as the back of the head. Directional terms such as anterior and posterior are essential for accurately describing the relative locations of body structures. Images of the body's interior commonly align along one of 3 planes: the sagittal, frontal, or transverse. The body's organs are organized in one of 2 main cavities: dorsal, also referred to posterior, and ventral, also referred to anterior, which are further subdivided according to the structures present in each area. The serous membranes have 2 layers: parietal and visceral, surrounding a fluid-filled space. Serous membranes cover the lungs, pleural serosa, heart, pericardial serosa, and some abdominopelvic organs, peritoneal serosa. Make sure to smash the like and subscribe buttons to receive notifications all new contents.